In the late Middle Ages, when the clatter of hooves and the roar of battle still echoed across the landscapes of Western Europe, there existed a quieter world, one often forgotten in the stories of knights. Beyond the shining armor, beyond the triumphs, beyond the fear and fury of war, every knight eventually reached a moment when the sword grew heavier, the armor colder, and the world began to change without him. This is the story of that final chapter, the closing years in the life of a retired medieval knight, a period marked not by glory but by reflection, not by conquest but by the slow return to ordinary life after years defined by violence, honor, and unyielding duty. To understand this final chapter, we must step into the world of an aging knight living somewhere in Western Europe during the late 14th or early 15th century, a time when kingdoms expanded, allegiances shifted, and warfare itself began to evolve away from the mounted warrior who had once stood at the center of the medieval battlefield. The retired knight's life cannot be separated from the path that brought him here. From the moment he began training as a boy, likely around the age of 7, every day had been shaped by discipline, martial skill, and service to his lord. Years spent as a page, years more as a squire, long campaigns, harsh winters in the field, and countless moments of struggle left their mark. The knight who now enters old age carries a lifetime of memories, many cherished, many painful, and many too heavy to speak aloud. As he settles into retirement, he often returns to an estate granted by his lord or inherited from his family. These estates varied in size. Some knights lived comfortably on modest manors with small villages attached, while others returned to simpler homes, barely shielded from poverty. Despite the romantic vision of knighthood, wealth was never guaranteed. Many knights spent fortunes on armor, horses, and equipment. In their later years, they confronted the reality that war did not promise riches, only responsibility. On his estate, the retired knight's day begins far earlier than modern life might suggest. The medieval world rose with the sun. Servants or family members tended to basic chores, but the knight himself often walked the grounds each morning. Age stiffened his joints, but he moved with the discipline of a lifetime spent in armor. He checked the land, inspected the fields, and oversaw the tenants who worked the soil. Though he no longer rode into battle, leadership remained a part of his identity. His authority was quieter now, expressed not through command in war, but through guidance and management. Even in retirement, he remained part of a larger social order. The feudal bonds that defined knightly life never truly dissolved. He was still expected to provide counsel to his lord, to attend feasts or gatherings, and to serve as a representative of local authority. In many regions, retired knights acted as mediators, settling disputes or advising younger warriors. The knowledge carved from decades of conflict was valued, particularly during times of unrest. But beneath these roles lay the more intimate reality of aging. The knight's body, once trained for power and endurance, now carried the burdens of past injuries. Chronic pain from old wounds was common. Swords bent bone and tore muscle. Lances broke ribs. Falls from horses shattered joints. Medical care in the Middle Ages lacked the techniques that would emerge centuries later. A healed wound often meant a lifetime of stiffness or lingering weakness. Many retired knights walked with a limp, favored one arm, or lived with fading eyesight from years of exposure to sun, wind, and smoke.
Despite this, he remained attached to the tools of his former life. In a corner of his home, he carefully kept the armor of his youth. It might no longer fit him, or perhaps he lacked the strength to don it, but he maintained it out of duty, memory, or hope. His sword, once an extension of his body, was polished and preserved with reverence. It carried stories no one else would ever fully understand. Much of his time was spent reflecting on his past. Medieval society held strong religious values, and many knights experienced a shift toward increased spiritual contemplation as they aged. The church played a significant role in this stage of life. The knight attended Mass regularly, contributed to local monasteries, and sought peace through faith. Some even joined religious orders later in life, embracing a quieter existence of prayer and service. Though not all knights chose this path, the yearning for inner stillness was common after years of turmoil. His memories formed a tapestry of conflicting emotions. There were recollections of camaraderie, nights around campfires with companions who felt closer than brothers. There were triumphs, both large and small, that shaped the pride of a warrior. But there were also memories of loss. The medieval battlefield was unforgiving, and the knight had likely lost friends, squires, and fellow warriors. These ghosts lingered in moments of quiet. The world outside his estate was changing, too. Warfare evolved rapidly in the late Middle Ages. New technologies began to challenge the dominance of knights on horseback. Crossbows and longbows proved devastatingly effective. The introduction of early gunpowder weapons altered the battlefield in ways many older knights struggled to comprehend. Castles that once stood impregnable were threatened by cannons. Methods of combat shifted toward infantry-centered strategies. For the retired knight, these changes often brought a mixture of relief and melancholy. He had lived through an age defined by the mounted warrior, and now he watched that era fade. Young soldiers no longer aspired to become knights in the same way. Armor grew heavier, more complex, and more expensive, while battles became more chaotic and unfamiliar. The knight may have felt pride in having witnessed a golden age, but also sorrow that the traditions he devoted his life to were slowly slipping away.
Family life offered both comfort and responsibility. If he had children, especially sons, he carried the duty of preparing them for the lives they would lead. Not all sons became knights. The costs were high, and opportunities varied. Some followed religious paths, some managed the household, and some pursued trade or scholarship. Daughters were raised with expectations shaped by the customs of the time, marriage alliances, household management, and the social ties that bound families together. The retired knight took his role as a father or grandfather seriously, teaching values of honor, loyalty, and discipline, though he often softened with age. As seasons passed, the rhythm of rural life defined his days. He observed harvests, permitted festivals, and ensured his estate remained stable through famine or hardship. Winter brought long nights of quiet reflection. Summer brought visitors, trade, and local events. The medieval world was cyclical, and retirement allowed him, perhaps for the first time, to truly experience the turning of those cycles. In his final years, the knight often confronted the legacy he would leave behind. Legacy mattered deeply in medieval society. He considered the condition of his lands, the welfare of his family, and the memory others would carry of him. His reputation as a warrior, as a leader, and as a man mattered not only in life, but in death. He ensured his affairs were in order, prepared his will, and often donated armor or horses to younger warriors or to the church. These acts reflected both generosity and a desire to pass on the strength he once embodied. When the end came, it was usually quiet. Very few knights died in battle during their final years. Most passed away on their estates, surrounded by family, clergy, or longtime retainers. Their funerals were marked by ritual and respect. A knight's sword might be laid at his side, a symbol of the life he lived and the duties he fulfilled. Bells rang in the local church, and prayers echoed for the soul of a man whose world had been one of both violence and virtue. In the centuries that followed, stories of knights became legends. Songs, poems, and tales transformed them into idealized heroes, fearless, noble, unwavering. But the truth was more human. Knights aged, they felt pain, they feared change, they longed for peace. Their retirement was not the end of their story, but a final chapter filled with reflection, humility, and an attempt to reconcile the life they lived with the world they left behind. Today, when we imagine medieval knighthood, we often picture battles, armor, and heroic acts. Yet the closing years of a knight's life reveal a different kind of strength. The quiet endurance of a man who carried the weight of a lifetime on his shoulders, and who learned in the end that the most lasting victories were not won on the battlefield, but within the heart.